Welcome everyone to Q&A with Qlik. For some background, for those of you who may be new to this series, this is the support webinar we like to call our live office hours, where users can ask their burning questions to our panel of Qlik Techsperts on the given session's topic. Today, we are hosting our second developer series session, which is under the Q&A umbrella, to provide space for these deeper technical discussions. We plan to make this a regular thing, so please let us know what you'd like to hear more of. Today we'll be covering what's the Diff, Nebula, Picasso, Enigma, which is exactly the question I was thinking in our first session, where we covered API integration and embedded analytics. We'll talk through the differences across these three open source libraries today to help developers communicate with the Qlik engine and integrate visualizations and mashups on top of it. So by means of introduction, I am Katie Davis. I am a senior community program manager on our customer success experience programs team here in the global support organization. And I will be your moderator. I am by no means considered a developer, so I will put my learning hat on and be the one asking the hard-hitting questions, while our developer advocates will be on the call and providing the answers. I do, however, share the same passion as our panelists, which is enabling our users to be successful with our tools. Now, before I introduce our esteemed panelists, I'll quickly go over our session parameters. Everyone is currently on mute, and we ask that you type your questions in the Q&A panel. We will not be using the panel to respond directly to your question, as we plan to speak to them all live today. Our survey link will pop up when the session is ended, and let me bring it up now. Right there. It's also in this presentation. Please be sure to complete it. It takes 15 seconds. We've made it shorter and sweeter this year for you. We also plan to email the link out with the recording 1 week from today, and the survey will be shared along with it. It helps us continuously improve this experience for you. So, looks like we have a lot of new participants in today's session, and the one thing we love is when participants share future topic ideas you like to hear about. These can range from anything product specific or functionality focused. It can be for these developer sessions, or it could be for our general sessions that we have on a monthly basis. Go ahead and email your ideas to digital@qlik.com. Topics can also be included when you register. Speaking of registration, when you sign up for our next session, there's an option way at the bottom of the page that you can check to receive monthly invitations for our sessions, so you do not miss a beat. Keep in mind that even though we have Qlik Techsperts on the line, we will not be able to answer any of your questions regarding a specific open case. And we just ask that you keep the questions relevant to today's topic, which of course is what's the Diff, covering Nebula, Picasso, and Enigma.js. So without further ado, joining us, we have Jeff Goldberg, a product management director. We also have Gertrude Westren, a junior developer advocate. And last but certainly not least, we have Dipankar Mazumdar, a developer advocate. And I'll have you go last in our introductions, Dipankar, so you can give us a brief overview, get us on the right track before we dive into these questions. So Jeff, you want to share some stuff about yourself?
I would love to share some stuff about myself.
Great.
It's great to see everyone on the call today. Thanks so much for joining. For those of you who don't know me, I am a product manager here at Qlik. I've been with the company now for a cumulative almost 8 years, actually, April 15th. I am now the platform product manager, but I work on our API strategy as well as a number of our embedded topics. So really looking forward to the discussion today, helping to demystify the different libraries we have, and also get your questions and your feedback around those libraries so that we can continue to improve the developer experience and help you extend Qlik with ease.
Awesome. All right, Gertrude, you're up next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gertrude, and I am based off the Lund office. I'm fairly new to Qlik, right about 3 months. So if there are any new Qlik developers, just know that I'll be here for you to try and make everything as easy as possible for you, and we can potentially learn together. And I look forward to this session. Just feel free to pop up questions and we will interact. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Gertrude. Definitely need that perspective. And Dipankar, last but not least.
Hey. Thank you, Katie. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Dipankar, and I'm a developer advocate here at Qlik. I have been within the Qlik ecosystem for quite some time now, primarily focusing on APIs. And developer experience and developer feedback is definitely something I care about. And we're happy to have a session like this and discuss about our open source libraries. Yeah.
Great. And I'll stop sharing so you can share.
Yeah.
Right? All right.
Sure. So before we go over the questions for today's session, I wanted to just set some context and probably give some idea of what's the difference. That's like the prime thing I guess we are here for. So yeah, let me share the screen.
I'm assuming there's pros and cons to all of them, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, probably the whole question would be why do we have 3 different libraries, and what is the focus of each of these libraries, and what specific use cases can we deal with this particular libraries, right? So to start with, and first I will go over Nebula.js. I guess that's one of the things that have been on discussion in the current time, and I guess that's one of the best way right now to look into in terms of embedding and extending Qlik. So Nebula.js basically is a collection of JavaScript libraries, visualizations, and command line interfaces that would primarily allow you to display Qlik sense to develop charts. And when I say primarily display the Qlik sense develop chart, it can mean embedding your Qlik sense visualizations into a web application, or it can mean you want to customize out of the box visualization. You want to build a visualization that is not there within Qlik sense system, and you want to bring it within the Qlik sense ecosystem. So essentially, it works as a wrapper on top of the Qlik's associative engine. So that means it will allow our developers to easily communicate and embed or extend visualizations on top of it. Nebula.js is pretty easy to get started with because it is available as a node package manager package. So the main package, which is the starters package, is something that is there in npm, and you would be able to just use the Nebula.js by doing an npm install. In the right, I just put out a picture out there. That's an extension that I developed in the past using Nebula.js, but also I involved a third-party visualization framework called D3.js. So this is a visualization that wasn't there in Qlik, and so it might be for my analysis, it was necessary for me to build something that goes into this particular visual, and I was able to do it using Nebula. Now going to the next visualization library, again, Picasso Nebula.js primarily focuses on the embedding part and the visualization part of it. The next library that we have is called Picaso.js. And you might probably know as well that this is also a visualization library. However, Picaso.js works in a different way and has been built with a whole different purpose. And I would say the focus here is rather components, and it's primarily a component-based library with the look and feel of Qlik sense. So I would like to go a bit more about components. When I say components, so if you see the chart on the right, it's a stream graph. It has a couple of components in itself. For example, here we have the axis. We have labels on the axis. We also have a couple of lines or the stacked streams. So these particular elements that are there in the particular visualization, they form a component and they together come up as a visualization. So this means Picasso.js lets us to basically build practically anything. So for example, you might have just a scatter plot, and instead of the point in the scatter plot, which are circles typically, you'd like to use, extend them to like probably one of the circle as a pie chart and like derive more insight from it, right? So it really allows us to like build any kind of visualization that we want to, and based on just the components part. So third part would be like the Picaso.js library is extensible via plugins. So that means it provides a plugin system that makes it pretty easy to extend the existing capabilities. So for example, you can register and add your own components. You can add custom components to play well with the existing ones. You can create your own themes and stuff. And it really opens up the scope for that customization. That is really something that you would like to do with visualizations. And the third library, which is Enigma.js, is essentially the backend part. And this is where you are having all the communication with the Qlik's engine and all the, dealing with the hypercubes. You would probably need to pass on a particular app model to your Nebula.js app, and the communication between those apps, and how do you like deal with the dimensions and the measures within the app. Those kind of communications, all that deals with the engine, is basically happening through the Enigma.js. And Enigma.js is basically a JavaScript based library that allows you to do all those communication. So in general, that is what the three libraries are specifically targeted for. If I have to go over like Nebula.js, I would preferably use it for embedding and extending Qlik sense. Picaso.js would be something that you would like to go over for customization. You'd like to extend all the visualization capabilities, build any kind of component you like, whether it's custom or something that is there in-house, and then do all the communication using the Enigma.js. I would like to do I will probably do a comparative analysis between these things, but Kitty, probably we can just take some questions and then I can like show them as well, and we can take it from there.
Okay, perfect. So reminder to everyone, and here I can share screen too. Here we go. To ask your questions in the Q&A panel below. It's the one that has two speech bubbles and says Q&A. And we have some that we've scoured community for and can start to kick off the session. And I think you might have covered this, but maybe you can do high level. What is the main purpose for each of these libraries? Nebula, Enigma, Picasso. Yeah. And this might be a controversial question, but do you have a favorite one that you like working with?
Yeah. So like I said, like the main purpose of this particular libraries are like pretty specific. Picasso and Nebula goes into the visualization part, which I would essentially like to think it as a front-end part, and like it leads to all extending and embedding Qlik to your web applications or anywhere within like any third-party systems. So I would definitely position Nebula and like to use Nebula for somewhere where I have to still deal with the Qlik engine and like try to like come up with the pre-built charts. So in case of Nebula, I do not have to really invest a lot of time in building those visualizations, right? I mean, they are just coming with this pre-built charts. I mean, that's what we essentially have. It's just a way we can communicate with the engine and use the particular data that is coming from the engine to build a visualization. But the visualization part, the charts are already pre-built. So we can just basically leverage those pre-built charts and connect our engine data and have a full-blown visualizations. However, with Picasso, the way it works is a bit different. Here we do not have the pre-built charts, but we are basically have the ability to like build up a component ourselves, and we can use it in a way that we want to and build a visualization that we would like to. So it would typically depend on the use case. For example, if I would like to like extend, just basically have a Qlik sense chart and outside my Qlik system and like embed it to a particular web application. And I'm not looking for much of customization and stuff. I would preferably go with Nebula, because like that already gives me a quicker way and efficient way to do it. But if I have to like go with more of customization, for example, a parallel coordinate plot, which is not there with Nebula right now, I would probably like try to build it up myself. And that means I would like really have to invest some time with the development activities, and I the code is more code intensive and stuff. But that is how I like to position themselves in terms of visualizations. And Enigma, like I said, it's more, Enigma, like I said, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and Enigma would basically be a tie-up to connect everything together. It's basically like a way to like bring everything together. And dealing with any kind of variables, they're dealing with any kind of hypercubes data, all those sort of things would be with Enigma.
Yeah, I can jump in a little bit on the Enigma piece, right? So it like Dipankar says, Enigma kind of is the glue for everything, because that's actually your connection to the Qlik engine. So when you're using Nebula and you're rendering visualizations, whether you're creating them on the fly or if you're pulling them out of a Qlik Sense application, the underlying connectivity to the data model is managed through Enigma. And then what Picasso allows, as you rightly put, Dipankar, it's the tool or the library for actually building up the all of the scaffolding, if you will, for the actual visualization. Nebula then becomes Nebula is the foundation for what you take from Picasso and actually drop the connectivity to the engine to. And then once you have that Nebula component or that Nebula visualization, you can then embed that into your own web applications, or you can actually package it up and make it available inside of the Qlik Sense client experience.
Awesome. And Czar has asked in our Q&A, I'm very new to Qlik. Are these libraries only used in Qlik? How is it to find developers familiar with these libraries? That's a good question.
Yep. So I can take this one. So Nebula and Enigma are purpose-built for Qlik. Basically, Enigma is our library for connecting to the Qlik engine outside of the core UI that we have using JavaScript and TypeScript. So when you want to make connections to the engine, whether that's to perform different activities on a Qlik Sense application, or like creating variables or dimensions and measures like Dipankar mentioned, or you want to get access to data in what we call hypercubes, which is a JSON structure that allows you to grab that data. That's how you would do that. And then Nebula is built so that it seamlessly integrates with Enigma and the Qlik experience. I'm not absolutely certain. Maybe Dipankar, you can tell me. Tell Czar. I think Picasso you can use. Anywhere. It's not. Anywhere. It's not opinionated. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So Picasso is typically built on top of D3.js. So anyone who is familiar with that kind of like syntax and topology, it basically works in a similar way. It's just a wrapper on top of D3. But the benefit is that you can use any kind of, and I was going to come to that, like the data structure part. So technically with Nebula, the data structure that goes in, it's basically kind of like a straight JSON matrix, which is basically a JSON with like matrix stuff data. But however, with Picasso, you can go with a more diverse flavored data set and data structure. So it can be like a two-dimensional array, an object, and it doesn't really need to be just Qlik specific data. It can be technically anything. So getting to the point, you can use the Picasso to build technically anything, and you can use it outside of Qlik ecosystem as well. However, Nebula and Enigma really makes that seamless integration easier. That's the whole point.
And how hard is it to find developers with that experience? I'm sure it's different every place where you are, but.
Yeah, and being developer relations, we are trying to build up that community and like try to like bring out some of the samples and whatever things we are doing in house. So in general, Picasso has some we have a good examples in observable. It's an open source library. So technically, like there are a lot of open examples. We do a lot of glitch examples as well. We can probably share them as well. So the community is really like taking up on this, all libraries, I think. So I think we will have some more shareable examples and tutorials soon as well.
Great, thanks. All right.
With Picasso, can I also just add that it's super interactive, which makes it really easy for you to visualize and see what you're working on. So that's also an advantage with Picasso.
Definitely, yeah.
And Giant asked, Jayan, I'm sorry, Jayan, do we have React.js and Nebula.js demo with specific use cases? Anything around that available?
Yeah. So we do have some React-based examples, like I was telling with the Picasso specifically. I have seen a couple of like React-based templates that develops the components on React and stuff. We are also trying to focus on other frameworks because like technically Nebula is framework agnostic. You can use it with React, Vue, or Svelte, any kind of modern frameworks. So I think we are also looking at having those kind of opportunities where we can do more of different frameworks, demo and stuff. But we do have some, as far as I remember, I do have some React-based examples as well with Nebula. And again, I'm not sure about like the specific use cases, but if it's relevant to a particular scenario where we are like building a specific visualization for some specific use case, then we do cover up those examples as well.
Yep. And actually, Katie, if I can share my screen.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me stop sharing. Okay. Perfect.
Let me make my screen ready for sharing.
Yeah.
I'm going to go here and I'm going to create a new window. Dipankar mentioned Glitch. If you go to glitch.com/@Qlik, we actually have a number of examples that you can look at that show what you can do, how to embed with Nebula, some of the supported charts, working with our machine learning libraries, as well as connecting to our engine through to Qlik Cloud. And then there's also some examples of Picasso here as well. You can see my screen, yes? And so if you go into these examples, what's really nice is Glitch is basically a sandbox environment. It's very similar to like Code Sandbox if you use that, or Replit as well. And you can go in, and what we'll see shortly, it's just logging in and waking up. But you can actually go into these examples and look at the actual code. So you can take a look and see what it takes to render. So in this particular case, we're rendering a bar chart and in JavaScript. And here we have our render, which is embedding from a specific app, a bar chart. We're embedding it into a div tag that has an ID of bar. And then we're essentially specifying title as the dimension. And then for the measure, we're actually putting in an expression. So you don't need to have an actual chart that's been created inside of a Qlik Sense application. And now we have a fully interactive chart here that we can work with, and we can go ahead and click around. This is a very basic example of the bar chart, but you get to see very quickly what it takes to actually embed this example. And then there are a number of other options. Let me just click back out into the team. And then if you go and you see there's the different chart types for Picasso. So here's examples of where you can go in and look at, it's waking up. And as this is waking up, you can go ahead and you can just click through and you can see the different charts that are available, and you can look at those, look at the code, and you can see that some of these are actually built in React. So these are nice because they don't necessarily have any connection to the engine, so you can actually just see how the charts are actually composed. And then if you ever want to take these and actually make them your own with Glitch, what's really nice is you can just go ahead and remix to edit, and when you remix to edit, right, now you actually have your own sandbox. So now I can go ahead and I can start interacting and writing my own code inside of this editor and building it up.
All right.
Yeah.
And
so we have a, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a question by Miguel. I've been using the capabilities API to build some visualizations. How long should it take to migrate my good-looking charts into, say, Nebula.js?
Well, that is a great segue to take a quick short break and advertise our next session on April 26th, which is all about migrating from your extensions that if you've built visualization extensions built with the extension API that people have known and loved for a number of years, converting that and moving that over to Nebula. But one of the things that's really nice is that the library gives you the ability to, in terms of working with Nebula, it works very similar to that visualization API that's part of capabilities. So if you have built visualizations, let's say inside of Qlik Sense applications, and you're doing object level embedding using IDs, that's something that you can do with Nebula.js. I think the key difference right now is not all of the visualizations have been converted over to native Nebula visualizations. That's work that continues to be done. We're going to be putting up a page on Qlik.dev in the next couple of weeks that's going to show kind of a compatibility matrix, shows which charts have been converted already to Nebula that you can start working with, and then provide some roadmap on some of the other items.
And Czar, I see you asked to post a link to the April 26th session. We will get that up shortly. It's not out on community on our registration page yet, but we will send it with the week. So 1 week from today, next Tuesday, we'll send out a recording to this session, a link to the survey, and we'll also send that registration link for the next session so you can get it. So anyone who's registered today, whether you're here live or you're watching the recording, we'll make sure that we get that out to you. All right, and there's a question in the chat. I'll remind everyone to put it in the Q&A panel. It's a lot easier for us to spot, but thank you, Stefano, for reaching out. It says, is Leonardo UI another Qlik library? How does it relate with other libraries? Thanks in advance.
Jeff,
you want me? Yeah, you want me? Hey, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Leonardo is a styling library that's been around for a really long time. It's still used by extension developers. Qlik Clouds moved to something that we call Sprouts based on Material UI from Google. And we do have some plans to start making some of the styling aspects of Qlik Cloud available for people to use as they're building integrations for the platform. We're going to be enabling over time a lot more capabilities to extend the platform beyond just visualizations and Qlik Sense applications, because there is so much on offer in Qlik Cloud. But yes, Leonardo is basically CSS styling that you can take advantage of, and I think that there is some JavaScript there as well. And in terms of how it relates with the other libraries, it should be able to work just fine. Nebula is a little bit different when it comes to styling, because the CSS is actually generated dynamically as far as the charts go. So that's one of the things that we've gotten back from a feedback perspective that we're looking into as to how to make the CSS in Nebula charts more accessible. So stay tuned for more information on that.
Great, thank you. All right, reminder everyone to get your questions in. There's one here that says, how do I get started with using these libraries for my development purpose? Are there any tutorials, help videos? Do you guys want to highlight some of those?
Yeah, and I think Jeff really went over Glitch as well, and I would say that it's like really something, a starting point to learn and play around. I would say, like, with all the existing examples. So Glitch, we can share the link as well. But like Glitch is something that I would highly recommend. But we also have good examples in Qlik.dev. Specifically, we are trying to focus on how to get started, like how do we migrate this visualizations into Nebula framework. Or we also have started like a new YouTube channel, which is developer focused, and we go through this small Hello World sessions where we talk about these different libraries. In in general, what they do, what their purposes are, some of the good examples, and how do we get started with this kind of things. So Qlik developer playlist is something to look out for as well. And we do have planned for some live coding sessions and stuff where we will probably go online and just share, probably code together with the community and do some of the visualizations and stuff using these libraries. I can share some links as well from our developer playlist and the glitch.
Awesome. And I'm sharing Qlik.dev. It's really easy to get to, and a lot of great resources out there, for sure.
Qlik design blog is also some place that I constantly post, and there are some excellent posts from the Qlik demo team as well. So that is also a place to be. So Qlik design blog, there are some really good examples. Personally, I have learned a lot in terms of using Nebula or Picasso. The Qlik demo team did a really excellent work with the Fortune 500 app. I think I can also share the link of that particular app if you guys haven't seen it, but that's really something that is, super cool.
Is the design blog out on community?
Yes, it's called the Qlik design blog. Yeah, if you show more, and
so we go to blogs.
Yeah, the show more, and probably you should be.
Here we go. Good thing we did this because it wasn't super easy to find. So if you go to community, then go to blogs, you'll see our academic program blog. You'll see our innovation blog. That's where you know where new features are coming out. That's highlighted there. The support updates blog, which is my favorite because I'm always posting on that. If you have support news, it goes there. And then if you click more, this is our Qlik design blog. So keep an eye out for that, for everything development related. Great.
So Katie, awesome. I see another question regarding Picasso and Nebula and the differences. I think as Dipankar explained, basically what Picasso is it's an abstraction of D3. And what that means is we've essentially built a set of instructions that make it easy for you to leverage the D3 library for building visualizations in general with some Qlik specific sugar on top of it with, as Gertrude mentioned, interactivity, extra levels of interactivity and that sort of thing, especially when you connect that with data from Qlik. And the way that you connect that data from Qlik is using Nebula.js and Enigma. Nebula basically gives you the ability to take what you build with Picasso.js or any other visualization library like HighCharts or AnyChart or Plotly, and essentially add properties that are Qlik specific to that visualization so that customers or end users can go ahead and change the properties and styling or behaviors of those visualizations based on what you code into them. And then also to enable them to be added to the core Qlik Sense experience so that when BI developers are creating Qlik Sense applications, they can just go into a property panel, an object panel, and drag and drop this visualization extension that you've created. That's what Nebula enables you to do.
I also have a comparison analysis chart that I kind of personally did it for myself when I started with Nebula and Picasso. And I can share it. I think that might also give some more details around it. And I think there was one more question around that. How do we know? Can we mix Nebula and Picasso? And is there a situation where we can use both of them together? So I can also address that. So
great.
Yeah. So if I go to my demo, so yeah, so I try to segregate them based on different aspects. So for example, when we have to have developed visualizations, Nebula comes with pre-built charts, and Picasso is basically, you can build using your own components, like Jeff mentioned. You can build technically anything. When it comes to embedding Qlik Sense native charts, Nebula comes out of the box. I mean, you can just use those pre-built charts and embed them. However, Picasso, like I said, it's come with a different purpose, and you can obviously embed it with Nebula in a later point. But I mean, that's something that Nebula has an advantage with. Coding expertise, I would always consider Nebula to be like, you don't need to really have that kind of expertise. You can just take those pre-built chart, use it, and leverage it in your own way. However, Picasso is more developer intensive. Like, it would really need to, like, invest some time with the coding, and there is a learning curve towards it. In terms of customization, Picasso is really highly customizable. It allows you to obviously develop components of your own, and you can customize it in your own way. However, Nebula is a bit limited in terms of that, given that it comes with those look and feel of clicks and charts, and we would like to still have the experience over there. However, with Nebula plugins, which is something that we came up recently with, you can also do a lot of customization, and you can essentially bring those component part of Picasso inside Nebula as well. And I can share an blog that I wrote as well, which kind of helps you to implement Nebula plugins. In terms of data structure, like I mentioned, Nebula it has a specific structure that it interacts with. Typically, it's a straight data with some kind of JSON matrix. However, Picasso goes over into wider data formats like 2D array, like I said, objects, or even it can take data from the Qlik Sense hypercubes. So that's like a high-level comparative analysis that kind of tried to like bring out like when do we need to use Nebula and when we can use Picasso. But then going back to the second question, like, can I use a combination of Nebula and Picasso? And the answer to that is, of course, you can. I mean, and that's like I would say like that really covers up a lot of options. For example, you can develop a standard or a custom chart component. For example, if we see in this chart here, this is a dumbbell plot. And this component is a custom component that we have developed in Picasso. And what I can do is I can typically use this particular component inside my Nebula configuration and use that particular configuration like I would use it with any other chart. So what I mean to say is, typically, if I had a bar chart in Nebula, I could have done it in a similar way. However, in this case, I just used a Picasso.js component, which is a third-party component inside my Nebula configuration. And I also have a good demo to like go through it. I think this is also like something that I was working on. So for example, in this particular dashboard here, we are trying to understand like the crime in Toronto City. So we have a couple of embedded charts in Nebula. For example, these are a couple of the bar charts and line chart that I embedded from Qlik Sense app. I developed some of them on the fly. However, I also used a custom component here, which is like this particular scatter plot. So this scatter plot, typically scatter plot comes with like 3 primary components. One, the x-axis, y-axis, and the points, which are typically circles. In this use case, I wanted to use a custom component. So what I did is I built a component in Picasso.js, and I used that particular component, like I was saying in this particular case. I used that particular component here. The points that you see here are basically end polygon shapes, and that I have used it within a Nebula chart. I've integrated it within a Nebula environment. So the benefit to that is that this will work in a similar way as we would like to work with any kind of Qlik Sense environment. So for example, any kind of selection that I do would typically work here as well. Another advantage here is that since I'm using a Nebula component here, I can also use a function which is specific to Qlik Sense inside this particular chart. So what I mean to say is, if I get to go to the code, what I mean to say is that like Jeff was showing us before, that we have a render function in Nebula which allows us to render the various charts that are already there. In this case, what I did is here I used a field, and in the definition of the field, I basically use a function called k-means2d, which is basically a Qlik Sense specific function. Now, I would not have been able to use this particular function if it was not a Nebula chart, because Nebula is a wrapper, remember? It's working as a wrapper on top of the Qlik engine. So these kind of benefits are something that really provides an advantage, I believe. And for my specific use case, since I had to do some kind of clustering here, so I thought it might be a good idea for me to develop that custom component outside Picasso, but then bring it within Nebula and bring it all together.
That's super awesome.
I'm pretty sure that answers our question that we have. It says, I've been using Nebula for mashup development activities and would like to add more customization abilities to the Nebula-based charts. Is there a limitation, or are there some ways to achieve it? So is the answer to that, the customization built off Nebula is to work with Picasso? translate that?
That is definitely one way.
Okay.
But that would also require a lot of coding, because like you would like do like those components in Picasso and a lot of integration and stuff. But definitely that is a way. The other way, like I was mentioning, would be with the Nebula plugins, which we released in the Nebula 2.0 version. So with the Nebula plugins, what you can do is you can build those components within Nebula environment. You don't need to build it outside Nebula environment. So you can just build it as like Picasso component and integrate it within the Nebula. So I can just share an example as well, which kind of gets more into the, and we can deep dive later as well in this particular area. But definitely Nebula plugin is something that I look into now when I have to deal with customization in Nebula, and that does not relies on too much of customization. Like,
okay.
So I just shared a link in the chat, and that might also be a good example of like what plugins are.
And then maybe Dipankar, you can also highlight how Enigma comes into play in this whole full circle type of thing.
Yeah, and obviously with Nebula, like we would typically need to pass app model inside our Nebula, configuration, so that we can use those hypercubes data inside that is there in the Qlik's engine. So we would need to be able to interact with Qlik's engine in some way, and the way we do that is by passing an Enigma app model inside the Nebula app. That's like the starting point. So definitely that Enigma chunks, it kind of like I was telling, it's like the glue, and it ties up everything together. So I think that kind of is like the prerequisite to be able to like have those interaction, to be able to use a function within a Nebula environment and those kind of things.
All right.
Yeah, I think what you're both saying, both you, Gertrude, and Dipankar, is that the power that Qlik brings to bear with Enigma and the engine, Gertrude, like you're talking about, and that opening the door for all of that additional functionality that you're mentioning that you can bring into the visualization, Dipankar. It's really great that like you don't have to write your own k-means function.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You bring your data into Qlik. You use Enigma to pull it into your web application, and then because you're using Enigma to pull the data into your application, now the visualization that you're trying to embed into your web application can take advantage of all the powerful capabilities without having to write a whole bunch of complex code to actually recreate a k-means function.
That is it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the nice thing is that you can do it on the fly. Like, I think part of what your example is really cool is that you can actually connect to that selection model of Qlik, or what you can do is you could create a custom selection model inside of your web application. So you could actually, inside of that definition of the k-means formula that you showed on the screen just a few minutes ago, you could actually change the variables there. And to Gertrude's point, you're connecting back to the engine, and it's actually going to redo that calculation in real time. So it's super, super cool.
Yep.
That's awesome. I love watching you nerd out over it. All right, I'm going to remind everyone we only have about 15 minutes left, and this time is yours. So make sure you get your questions in. If you haven't asked them yet, now's the time to do so. We do have a question here that says, in the past, I have developed extensions using the extension API, and I'm comfortable using that. Now, if I want to use Nebula for extension development, how does that change things? Is there a separate learning curve? Any benefits?
So I'll take this from a product management perspective, but then Dipankar, you can talk about it from an experience perspective. From a product management perspective, there's actually a fair bit of overlap between the extension API and Nebula. One of the complexities of building any sort of visualization extension, I think, for any platform is the concept of building out the properties that you need in order to allow your end users to fill those things out so that they can make the visualization work the way that they want it to. The nice thing is if you've built a property panel already using the extension API, you can take that exact property panel definition and move it right into Nebula without any changes whatsoever and begin using it. So right there, you can take that refactoring that like right off the table. You can go ahead and use it, reuse it. So that's super awesome. In terms of the way that you instantiate certain things or how you start to use different capabilities within Nebula, the way that we've really tried, the approach we've tried to take is a component-based approach. So you'll notice when you look at the documentation, there are these different like I'll call them sub-libraries, but basically like classes that you can bring in, like use effect, use layout, use brushing, use this, use that. And what that allows you to do is to basically mix and match what you need for your visualization extension so that you don't have to bring in a whole bunch of code in order to take advantage of the things that you want to do. And then I think the other thing is that Dipankar just mentioned is this idea of being able to actually extend a chart that already exists through the plugin mechanisms that exist in some of the charts, and that continues to expand. So if you look at like the scatter plot, and I think the bar chart now has it as well, you have the ability to actually add these plugins in, which enable you to add different layers on top of the visualizations that are already there. That's something that you would have to code into your own custom extension. So in some cases, you may not even need a custom extension anymore. You just need to extend one of the visualizations that's actually out of the box from Qlik. But to Dipankar, I think the second part of the answer is, what's the experience like between the two?
Yeah, and I didn't try that experience myself. Like when I was starting with like Nebula, since I came from that extension API environment, I wanted to like see like, I have an extension that I have developed in extension API. How do I do the same in Nebula? And does it involve any extra effort in that? Is there a learning curve or separate that is something that I have to like rely on? So I just posted a link, and that's my experience that I have jotted down in this community article. It basically shows like how do you migrate an existing visualization extension to Nebula framework. But to sum it up, my experience was pretty similar. It was almost the same that I had with extension API, minus all the extra garbage file that was coming up with a lot of wrappers on top of like extension API, which like require JS and those kind of things. And I also felt that Nebula, like Jeff mentioned, it's very modular and it's component wise. So it allowed me greater flexibility in programming and like code maintenance as well. For example, in the future when I had to like add more things on top of this, it was pretty easy for me to like add it, since it was modular. It was the maintainability was pretty easy for me. Also now with Nebula, I think one of the things that we talk less about is that Nebula also comes up with a local development server, right? I mean, whenever we are doing extension development, all we have is that we have to basically run the start command with npm or something or yarn, and we essentially have a local development server for ourselves. So that way we can also get to know, like we can visualize the output as we code. So it's really a good way for us to like, know what we are doing rather than like being able to like put together everything and then zip it up and like, bring it to the environment and like see what is there. Third point would be like the modern framework dependency. It really has no dependency on required.js or things like jQuery and those stuff. So it's really lightweight. Like we have tried to like make it really lightweight. And I think it's really faster in terms of build and deployment as well, because like you can really use it as NPM packages and stuff. So this is my experience. I think Katie, thanks for opening up in the screen. And I think that's really like leads you to like how you can migrate your current existing extensions to this new framework.
Great. I'll definitely be reading that after this. All right, and I have our last question here. So for everyone on the call, speak now or forever hold your peace if you're holding on to a question. The last one we have is, are all QlikSense client-specific charts available as part of Nebula? There we go. I got it out by the end of it all. Could you follow?
So I can answer that question. The answer today is no, but there are a significant number of visualizations that are available. So Katie, if you go to qlik.dev.
Yep, I have it open on another tab here.
Oh, in Edge. Good for you. And if you go to libraries and tools.
Libraries and tools.
Yeah, and then you see visualizations in the list down below
Right
where it says
here.
introduction. Yep, you can click on that. You can see all of these visualizations that are here on the left-hand side. These are all Nebula. These are all the visualizations that are currently available through Nebula. So you can see the action button, the bar chart, the box plot, the pie chart, sand key, scatter plot, the table. We continue to work on these visualizations, continue to add functionality to them. We'll be talking about how you could do things like exporting data in the future, as well as other capabilities that you may want to bring to bear within these visualizations. And like I said, we're going to be releasing in the next couple of weeks on Qlik.dev a compatibility chart. So you'll see from going from this visualizations page, probably up in the introduction, just a current compatibility, which will show you what's available through the capability API, what's available through Nebula, and that will give you a sense of where we're at in the transition. But the client team who's responsible for visualizations in the platform, the standard visualizations in the platform, has been working very hard and aggressively to move our visualizations over. Items like the table, and I know that there's a lot of demand for the pivot table. Those are very complex tables to build, which is why people want to use the out-of-the-box ones versus building their own. But it's going to take someone a long time to build those, and we're bearing that burden for you. But we want to make sure that we have something that's performant, that works, that provides the functionality that people expect from a Qlik visualization. So stay tuned for more on that.
That's great. All right, and I'll go through our resources again. Qlik.dev is where we are now. Libraries and tools is how you can find visualizations and so much more on this site. We have our Qlik design blog on community.qlik.com. Go under blogs and find our design blog. And then there's also a forum that might be of interest, right? Integration, extensions, and APIs. If you guys want to nerd out over there, feel free to do that. And then there's the video series that Dipankar and Gertrude are working on. What's that called again?
Yeah, it's the Qlik developer playlist in YouTube under Qlik help under Qlik. Yeah.
Awesome. Our Qlik YouTube playlist. For Q&A with Qlik, if you go over, hover over support, programs, I'll call out Techspert Talks. That's run by my colleague Troy Rainey. He does a lot of, I would say, if we are the office hours webinar, he's the show and tell webinar. So he'll show you all the details of a new feature or a current one, troubleshooting. And then Q&A is where you have all of your questions, forums answered. Upcoming events, we have April 12th, migrating from Qlik View to Qlik Sense SaaS. We'll show that clear soon enough. And download do's and don'ts. So that's probably more for our on-prem customers. And what you'll see up here shortly is the April 26th session, which is migrating your old extension APIs to new APIs. Someone can speak to that better. I'm probably not doing it justice.
No, either, yeah.
That's April 26th. We'll send the link out for registration when we send your recording 1 week from today for today's session. You can also find that recording when you click at past events. You'll see our last one. If you liked what you saw today and you didn't make our last session, our State of the API video is out here for you to view. We like to make it easy for all of you where you can really click to the question. If you just want to see something real quick, we have the answers there. But we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Let me pull up our survey link as a last hoorah. Go ahead and answer that survey and let us know what you want to hear next. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. We're so glad you were able to join us today, and we'll see you next time on April 26th. So thank you, panelists.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Please, I just
Thank
want one more thing before everybody leaves. Please fill out the survey. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you want to see more of. Tell us what you don't want to see any more of, so that we'll do something different that you do want to see more of from a developer perspective. We're here for you.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Great job, Deepankar. Nice
Bye.
job, Gertrude.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.